Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
So it is. So I have to minimize this. So basal ganglia, it is telencephalic in origin. It is essential constituent of the extrapyramidal system, and it plays important role in control of the posture and voluntary movements. So basal ganglia, it is the gray matters, okay, which lies within the cerebral hemispheres. So it consists of corpus striatum, amygdaloid nucleus, and crostrum. So this is the crostrum, and we'll talk about the corpus striatum. Actually, its major component is, so first, when you say the basal ganglia, you have to remember this caudate nucleus, putamen, and globus pallidus. Okay, I'll repeat this again. Whenever someone say about basal ganglia, what you have to remember, it is a gray matter. Basal ganglia is the gray matter which is present within the cerebral hemisphere, and they are caudate nucleus, the putamen, and globus pallidus. This putamen and globus pallidus is actually lentiform nucleus. Okay, so it involved in the control of posture and movement. And as I told you, amygdaloid nucleus is also the part of basal ganglia, but its function is different. Okay, it doesn't help in posture and control movement. Okay? So this is the division. So look at here. This is caudate nucleus. This is lentiform nucleus, and this is amygdaloid body. So this is basal ganglia actually. So it is divided like this. Basal ganglia is divided into corpus striatum, amygdala, and crostrum. So look at here. This small one of gray matter. This is the crostrum. So, and this corpus striatum is again divided into neostriatum and paleostriatum and substantia innominata. Okay, you have to remember this corpus striatum is divided into neostriatum and paleostriatum. This neostriatum is again divided into caudate nucleus and nucleus accumbens. Okay, and this paleostriatum is divided into putamen and globus pallidus. This together is known as lentiform nucleus. Basically, just for the summary or to memorize yourself, you have to remember caudate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus, after that crostrum and amygdaloid body. These are the part of basal ganglia. And these are what? These are gray matter which are present in the cerebral hemisphere. Another structures which are closely related to this basal ganglia is subthalamic nucleus. Look at here. This is subthalamic nucleus. Zona increta. These are the zona increta of the encephalon, and substantia nigra. Most probably you are familiar to this. In midbrain you have studied substantia nuclea and red nucleus. You know about the red nucleus. Okay, so this is the red nucleus. So these are the structures which are closely related to the basal ganglia. So talking about the corpus striatum, why it is called striatum? Because whole nucleus mass is striated in appearance. It looks like striatum, so that's why it is known as corpus striatum. So it is situated lateral to the thalamus. It is divided into caudate nucleus and the lentiform nucleus by this internal capsule. Okay, look at it. This internal capsule is going like this, and it's divides these fibers of the internal capsules, band of the nerve fiber of this internal capsule, divide this into caudate nucleus and the lentiform nucleus by this internal capsule, and whole of this is look as like as the striatum. So this is known as the corpus striatum. Now, phylogenetically, the corpus striatum form two distinct functional units, which I told you, that is neostriatum and paleostriatum. In neostriatum, the structure, connection, and function between the caudate nucleus. Look at here, sorry. This is the head of the caudate nucleus and putamen. These two are connected in the neostriatum. Okay, so they are known as they are collectively known as neostriatum. if someone asks you what is neostriatum, then you have to say it is the connection and function between the caudate nucleus and the putamen. Okay, so they are known as the neostriatum. Whereas paleostriatum, it's formed by the globus pallidus only. Okay, it provides chief efferent projection fibers of basal ganglia. Okay? So please remember this. If caudate nucleus and putamen is combined, then it is called neostriatum, whereas only about the striatum of the globus, then it is called paleostriatum or pallidium. Okay? Do you understand up to here? Hello?
Yes.
Student, just you have to remember caudate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus. Okay? So connection between this. Now we'll talk about the. So this is again features of corpus striatum. It is divided into lentiform nucleus and caudate nucleus. So look at it. Lentiform nucleus is again divided into globus pallidus and putamen. This two is known as neostriatum, caudate nucleus and putamen, whereas globus pallidum is globus pallidum itself only from the pliostriatum. Now, striatum is again divided into dorsal striatum and ventral striatum. Similarly, pallidum is also divided into dorsal pallidum and the ventral pallidum. So, in dorsal pallidum, what are the structure? That is caudate nucleus and putamen of lentiform nucleus. Okay, so this is the dorsal striatum, okay, or corpus striatum. Now in ventral striatum, what are the structure coming? So these are two structure you have to remember. This is nucleus accumbens and olfactory tubercles. These two are coming in the ventral striatum. This you have to memorize three, four times. If you study, then you only understand. So these are the MCQ questions. What are the content of ventral striatum? What are the content of dorsal striatum? So in dorsal striatum, you have to say caudate nucleus and putamen of lentiform nucleus. Whereas ventral striatum, it is forming by the nucleus. Look at it. This is nucleus ambiguous and olfactory tubercle. Okay. Similarly, we'll talk about the pallidus. That in pallidum, dorsal pallidus, as I told you, only solo globus pallidus. This globus pallidus only forming this pallidum. So internal medullary lamina divides this globus pallidus into two segments. This is outer segment and inner segment. Please focus on this. If you remember, this is the section which we will be given in the spotters and viva also. In that sections, what you are seeing here is this is the head of the caudate nucleus. Look at it. This is putamen, darker in color. This is globus pallidus. Globus pallidus is again divided into outer segment and inner segment. How to differentiate putamen and globus pallidus? Look at here. This putamen is darker in color than that of the globus pallidus. Now this is the internal capsule. Look at here. This is anterior limb, this is genu, this is posterior limb, and this is thalamus. So this is the section, and you have to see this is the crostrum also. Okay, so this globus pallidus is divided by intermedullary lamina into outer and inner segment. Now we'll talk about the ventral pallidum. It lies anterior to the anterior perforated substance. So this is anterior perforated substance and this is ventral pallidum. And it lies below the anterior commissure. So this is anterior commissure and this is anterior perforated substance. So in between the anterior commissure and anterior perforated substance, you are getting the ventral pallidum. Okay. Now we'll talk about the caudate nucleus. So this is caudate nucleus. This is the large comma shape of gray matter. It consists of head, body and tail. Look at it. This is the caudate nucleus and it consists of head, body and tail. Are you there? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Please do respond. So laptop को अगाडि बोलिरहेको जस्तो हुन्छ यसले. So caudate nucleus, look at here. This is the head of the caudate nucleus. Focus on this. This is the head of the caudate nucleus. This is large and rounded. Okay. So this head of the caudate nucleus forms the floor and lateral wall and the anterior horn of the lateral ventricles. So this is lateral ventricle. Look at it. So this is lateral ventricle. This head of the nucleus is forming, look at it, it's forming the floor and anterior horn of the and lateral wall of the lateral ventricle. So this is the MCQ question again. Head of the nucleus is forming what? Roof of the caudate nucleus or floor of the caudate nucleus. Inferior horn of the lateral ventricle or anterior horn. Then what you have to say? This head of the caudate nucleus is forming the floor and anterior horn of lateral ventricle and lateral wall of the lateral ventricle. Okay, and it is related laterally with the internal capsule. Look at it. This is internal capsule. So head is line. So lateral to the head of the caudate nucleus, you are getting the internal capsule. Do you understand this? Please, if you don't understand, I'll repeat this again. So this is the head of the caudate nucleus. It is large and rounded. It is forming the floor, lateral wall, and anterior horn of the lateral ventricles, and it is laterally related to the internal capsule. Now body. Look at it. This is head. It's forming the anterior horn of lateral ventricles. In these pictures, you can see it clearly. Now, we're talking about the body. So, body is long and narrow. So, body of the caudate nucleus is long and narrow. It forms the floor and central part of the lateral ventricle. So, it's forming the floor. Look at here. This is the floor. So, it is forming the floor and center part of the lateral ventricle. And it is separated by thalamus. This is separated by the thalamus by stria terminalis. In previous slide, most probably I have shown this. Stria terminalis and thalamostatic vein. Okay? Stria terminalis and thalamostatic vein. Look at it. This is stria terminalis. So this is thalamus. So this body is separated. This body, yellow color body, look at it. This is separated from this thalamus by the stria terminalis, and thalamostatic vein is also over here. Okay, so this is again the MCQ questions. Now tail. So this is the tail of the caudate nucleus, and tail of the caudate nucleus is long and cylinder. It's forming the roof of the inferior horn of lateral ventricle. Look at it. This is the tail, and it is forming the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. So this is anterior horn, this is inferior horn. So this caudate nucleus tail is forming the inferior horn of lateral ventricle. What about the anterior horn of lateral ventricle is forming by? Hello. Head of the caudate nucleus. Please memorize this. Now we are talking about the lentiform nucleus. So this is large lane-shaped and biconvex mass of gray matter. So this is lentiform nucleus. This is head of the caudate nucleus. This is anterior limb. This is genu. This is posterior limb, and this is thalamus. Please remember these sections. We can put pin anywhere in the head, in the anterior horn, in the genu of the internal capsule, in the posterior limb, in the globus pallidus, in the putamen. We can put anywhere pin. Okay, so you have to fix this part in your eyes. So that, and beneath this lentiform nucleus, lies the insula, and it forms the lateral boundary. This, look at here. This is internal capsule. So this whole lentiform nucleus is forming the lateral boundary of the internal capsule. Most probably you have studied the internal capsule, so you understand this. So lentiform nucleus, now it is divided by the white matter, external medullary lamina into two, again into putamen and globus pallidus. Please remember this. Whenever we ask what are the parts of lentiform nucleus, don't confuse. You have to say globus pallidus and putamen. This should be on your tip of the tongue. Okay? So now we're talking about the globus pallidus. So this is globus pallidus. As I told you, it lies medial part of the lentiform nucleus. So it consists of large motor cells. It's lighter in color than putamen. Look at here, you can compare this two. So this is globus pallidus is lighter in colors and it lies medial to the putamen, separated by lateral medullary lamina or external medullary lamina, whatever you can say. Okay, so this globus pallidus is again divided by thin sheet of fiber in medial medullary lamina into outer segment and inner segment. Now this putamen and globus pallidus combination called lentiform nucleus lies lateral to the internal capsule and it lies deep to the cortex of insula. Okay. Do you understand this? Globus pallidus. Any confusion? Hello? I have to repeat. I am going fast, please. Oh my God. Mana na.
We understand, ma'am.
यो टिममा चाहिँ बोलिरहेछ अरू सबै सुतिरहेछ क्या हो चेन्ज गरौँ ल पखन तिमीहरू जनवरी 3rd मा आउँदैछौ नि त्यहाँ म सबलाई सोध्छु बेजल ग्याङ्ग्लिया अस्ति के पढाएको थिएँ मैले थालामस भनेन भने मैले जानेछु म्याम छिटो छिटो पढायो के भयो के भन्नु पाउँदैन है सबले पढेर आउँथे So putamen, now we'll talk about this. This is larger and lateral part, dark in color, lateral to the internal capsule and globus pallidus. Obviously, sabai isko lateral bhayo. It is separated from globus pallidus by lateral medullary lamina, same thing. And lateral to it lies a gray matter called crostrum. Look at it, this is crostrum. So, putamen ko laterally also ke bhayo ta this crostrum. We separate this white matter into two layers, that is external capsule and extreme capsule. So look at this picture. This crostrum is here. It divides this white matter into external capsule and extreme capsule. So crostrum lies between extreme capsule and external capsule. Okay? So from medial to laterally, please go like this. From medial, this is thalamus. This is internal capsule. This is globus pallidus. Okay, outer segment, inner segment. This is external medullary lamina. This is putamen. After that, you are getting crostrum. After that, you are getting before crostrum, you are getting external capsule and then crostrum and extreme capsule. Okay, please from medial to laterally, please relate this, and we'll ask you in Viva. So this crostrum divide this into external capsule and extreme capsule. So this is the picture. Look at here. This is external capsule and crostrum, and this is the extreme capsule. This is extreme and this is external capsule. Lateral to the extreme capsule. So look at here. This extreme capsule. Look at here. This lateral to the extreme capsule. What you are getting is insula of the cortex. This is the insula of the cortex. You can see here, this is the insula of the cortex, deep within the lateral fissure of the hemisphere. When you see the lateral fissure in the cerebrum, deep inside it, you will get the insula. This is the same thing. So look at it, this is the crostrum. So it is the thin sheet of gray matter intervened between the putamen and insular cortex. So this as a whole is insular cortex, this is putamen, and this is the crostrum. And here, and consider it This rostrum is considered as a detached part of the insular cortex, or it can come from corpus trichomonas. This you have to remember. This is the separated part. Okay. When traced below in front, it is continuous with the anterior porphyrid substance and amyloid body. When rostrum is traced below, but it's look at it. This is the amyloid body. Okay, when rostrum is traced below, it's continue with the amyloid body. And this is what is amyloid body? It is the almond-shaped mass of gray matter in the temporal lobe. You can see here also amyloid nucleus. Okay, so it is the mass of gray matter in the temporal lobe, lying anterior superior and tip of the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. So this is the inferior horn. Look at here. This is anterior horn. This is inferior horn of lateral ventricle. So it lies anterior superior to the tip of the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. Are you clear up to here? What you have studied: caudate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus, rostrum, external capsule, extreme capsule, and amyloid body. Okay, up to here you have studied up to here. Now, deep to this amyloid body, you will get the uncus. Developmentally, it is related to the basal ganglia, this amyloid body, but it's functionally it is related to the limbic system. Okay? Developmentally, it is related here, but functionally it is related to the limbic system. Now we are coming to the substantia nigra. Look at it. This is the substantia nigra. It is the thin or a set of pigmented of nerve cells extend along the entire length of midbrain. It intervenes between the peduncle and tegmentum of the midbrain. Please, we'll put this pin in substantia nigra also. Then you have to identify the pin structure. Then you have to say this is substantia nigra. And what are the parts? It has two parts, that is pars compacta behind and pars. This part compacta and this is pars reticularis. Okay, reticularis is in front and it is rich in iron and deficient in melanin, whereas pars compacta contain dopaminergic neuron and rich in new melanin. So this compacta is rich in melanin. Please remember this. So it has two parts, in front and behind, that is pars reticularis and pars compacta. So whenever you are asked about substantia nigra, you have to say it is the pigmented nerve cells which is extend along the entire length of midbrain, intervene between the tegmentum and peduncle, and it consists of two parts, pars reticularis and pars compacta. Okay. Now we are talking about the subthalamus. So this, as I told you, subthalamus is closely related to the basal ganglia. So this is subthalamic nucleus and subthalamus or body of Lewis. It is biconvex mass of gray matter. This all today we are studying a gray matter. Okay, so it lies lateral to the hypothalamus and intervene between. Look at it. This is internal capsule and this is thalamus. So it lies between the internal capsule and the ventral nuclei of thalamus. So this is subthalamic nucleus. Now zona increta. Look at it. This is zona increta. It is a thin sheet of gray matter. These all are gray matter, as I told you. It intervenes between the ventral nuclei of thalamus and subthalamic nucleus. So this is again the MCQ question. Zona increta lies between. Then what you have to say? Zona increta. This lies between subthalamus and the subthalamic nucleus and the thalamus. What about this? What we have studied previously, subthalamus, it lies between internal capsule and thalamus. Please remember this. Subthalamus lies between thalamus and internal capsule, whereas zona increta, it lies between the thalamus and subthalamic nucleus. Now this three field you have to just remember. Okay, look at here. This field of H1. Field H1 of 4L. Just memorize. This lies between zona incrinta and the thalamus. Now another is field of H2, where it lies. It lies between the zona incrinta. This is zona incrinta and subthalamic nucleus. Please draw the pictures so that you can memorize. Okay, and field of HL of 4L, it lies lateral to this subthalamic nucleus. Field of, look at it, or you can say lateral to the zona incrinta. Okay, so these are the three field. These are the field of gray matters which are present in what a field of 4L. This you have to remember. These are the field of gray matter which are present in the white matter over here. Okay, so zona incrinta. Just remember, just memorize. Tinta field huncha. Where does it lies? It field 1 lies between zona incrinta and thalamus, and field 2 S2 lies between the zona incrinta and subthalamus. बुझेको? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
बाफ्रे तिमीहरूले कस्तो बुझिरहेको त? हामीलाई त बुझ्नु कति गाह्रो भयो थियो. साच्चै बुझेको कि यतिकै भनिरहेछु. Please, your content party, just draw the pictures. What you have to do is you have to draw the thalamus first. Then you have to draw the zona incrinta. Then you have to draw the subthalamic nucleus. Then what you have to do is you have to write, just make a dot between these two, that is zona incrinta and thalamus, that is field 1. And between the thalamus, this S2 lies between the zona incrinta and subthalamus. So tinta draw गर्ने, यो tinta dot राख्ने, अनि यो this field H lies caudal or lateral to this 2. है त? So connection of striatum. So caudate nucleus and putamen. Caudate nucleus and the putamen. This is the caudate nucleus and this is putamen. They together refer as a striatum. They are the input region of the corpus striatum and it contains majority of the afferent fibers. Whereas the dorsal striatum, it consists of afferent fiber 3 principal sources. Just name matter. You have to remember just name. Then you have to remember striatum. So from the cerebral cortex it is coming. From the thalamus it is coming. From the substantia nigra. So the fiber will be thalamus striatal. If coming from thalamus, if coming from substantia nigra, you have to say nigrostriatum. And if coming from cortex, then you have to say corticostriatum. These are the 3 fibers, afferent fibers coming from the 3 sources to the striatum. Okay? Now we'll talk about the corticostriatum fiber. Look at here. This is from the cortex to the striatum. They originate from the ipsilateral side of the cerebral cortex and to the putamen, most motor part of the striatum. Whereas putamen, it's received the most motor part of the striatum. Whereas caudate nucleus, its associated functions. What are the associated functions? Corticostriatal fibers are excreted to the striated neuron and transmitted to the glutamic acid. All this you'll study in physiology. So we are not going to elaborate in anatomy. Just you have to remember fibers coming from the cortex. Okay. Similarly, if the fibers coming from thalamus, okay, you have in the thalamus you have studied centromedial interlaminar nucleus. So from that part of the thalamus, it's the fibers is coming from the interlaminar nuclear or ipsilateral thalamus. This two, centromedial nucleus, parafascicular nucleus, to the caudate nucleus. This nucleus, just remember from thalamus to the caudate nucleus and putamen. Thalamus striate fibers. Okay. Now from the substantia nigra. So it originates from the pars compacta of the substantia nigra of the midbrain to the caudate nucleus and the putamen. Neurons of the pars compacta contain, again we have discussed, it consists of neuromelanin and their transmitter is dopamine. So which has both excitatory and inhibitory action. If this is damaged or dopamine is not released, which disease can occur? If dopamine is less.
Parkinsonism.
Okay, Parkinson. You have studied in physiology, eh? Now talking about the efferent fibers. From striatum to the pallidum, striatopallidum fiber and striatum to the substantia nigra. These are the only connections. What are the efferent and efferent fibers going? So you will just go through it. This is again from striatum to the pallidum, from caudate nucleus and putamen and to the globus pallidus. These are the all neurotransmitter or GABA you have studied, okay? This GABA aminobutyric acid. These are projection and inhibitory upon pallidum nucleus. The cell that project to the middle segments of both. Please remember this. What are the project to the middle segment? What will project to the lateral segment? These are the medial segment and lateral segment. The cell that project to the middle segment of the globus pallidus contain both P and dynorphin, whereas projection to the lateral segment contain metaencaphalin or both rich in GABA. You will study in physiology. Oh? Most probably you understand, just you remember the in sometimes they ask in MCQ what are the content of the medial segment and what are the content of lateral segment. Then you have to say in medial segment of the globus pallidus it contains substance P and dynorphin, whereas in lateral segment it contains the met-encaphalin. Okay, and both segment it is rich in GABA. So striatal efferent from caudate nucleus and putamen to the pars reticularis. So these are the connections, and this also convey GABA inhibitor to the, and both contain the substance P and dynorphin. You'll study in physiology. So now this is important. So fasciculus lenticularis and ansa lenticularis. Look at it. This is fasciculus lenticularis and this is ansa lenticularis. This one is ansa lenticularis and this is fascicular lenticularis. These are the fibers which are present in dorsal pallidum, or you can say pallidophagal fibers. Okay. Now we'll go on details about this. What is fasciculus lenticularis? Please remember this. Fasciculus lenticularis. These fibers arise from the inner segments of globus pallidus. And where does it lies? Occupies between the zona incurta and subthalamus. अघिको थियो नि H1 field fibers याद छ कि छैन? त्यहाँ नै के हुन्छ त? Lenticularis fibers. Please remember this. This is coming from the inner segment of the globus pallidus and it occupies between the zona incurta and the subthalamic nucleus. अघि के थियो भन त? Zona incurta र subthalamic nucleus को बीचमा के थियो अघि? Oh my god. बुझ्यो भनेको त्यही हो. मैले भने दिस जोना इन्कन्टा र यो सबथाल्मिकको बीचमा के थियो त? S2 फिलोफोरस. भनेपछि यहाँ के हुने भयो? लेन्सा fascicularis है. यो फिल र यो अघिको याद गर है. So this, look at it, fiber arising from the inner segment. Inner segment बाट आयो, आएर कहाँ occupy गर्यो त? Between the zona incurta and the subthalamus. So this is the fasciculus lenticularis. And what will happen? Ansa lenticular. Now we'll talk about the ansa lenticularis. अब ansa चाहिँ कहाँबाट आयो? It arises from the both segments of the globus pallidus. अघि fasciculus lenticularis कुन segment बाट आएको? From where it's coming?
Inner
Hello.
segment.
Inner segment, yeah. Fascicularis lenticularis the inner segment batayo. But ansa lenticularis कहाँबाट आयो? From both segment. Look at here. यो दुईटैबाट आइरहेको है, बोथेर यसबाट पनि आयो, यसबाट पनि आयो. So it's coming from the both the segment, and this ansa lenticularis fibers loop around the anterior limb of the internal capsule to form the ansa lenticularis. त्यो त्यसले के बनायो? Ansa lenticularis बनाएर अनि के गर्छ त? And it joins with the fascicular lenticularis to form the dentatorubulothalamic fibers. You fiber. Dentatorubulothalamic fibers. Just what you have to see is it's coming from both the segment, होइन? अनि anterior limbलाई loop गर्छ, and it joins the ansa lenticularis, and it joins with the fibers of fascicular lenticularis to form the dentatorubulothalamic fibers. Or you can make the flow chart like this. है यो गर्यो भने झन् बुझ्छ हेर त. Fascicular lenticularis plus ansa lenticularis plus dentatorubulothalamic fibers. तीनटा मिलेर what they are forming? Fasciculothalamicus. Okay, and where they are going in the thalamus को ventroanterior part, ventrolateral part, centromedial nuclei of interthalamus. Just what is fascicular lenticularis? What is ansa lenticularis भन्यो भने fascicular is from the inner segment of globus pallidus, ansa from both the segment, and they all combine to form fasciculus thalamicus, and they are going to the this part. अब फेरि के गर्यो त? Ventral anterior मा गएर supplemented the motor area on middle side of frontal lobe. अब यसले चाहिँ के गर्छ? Centromedial nuclei ले चाहिँ somatic sensory to the motor cortex. So if you make the flow chart, then you'll understand like this. Okay. So it's very difficult. From now today, what you have to do is you open the slide, you open the book, and you again go through it. Then only you will understand. एकैचोटिमा बुझ्दैन है. बुझिरहेछ कि के भयो? You are lost or you are dear? Hello. सुनिरहेछौ? Oh my God.
छ म्याम.
सुतेछौ कि क्या हो तिमीहरू अन गरेर स्लाइड?
छैन.
त्यस्तै लाग्यो मलाई त. So ventral striatum afferent from the limbic prefrontal temporal धेरै छ के यो, and from the dorsal raphe nucleus, locus coeruleus and paranuclear nucleus. Locus coeruleus कहाँ याद छ तिमीहरूलाई? locus coeruleus पढिसक्यो? के पढ्यो के पढेन भयो होला? अब सकिनलाई है. So from ventral stratum, just make a flow chart. Ventral pallidum, dorsomedial nucleus of thalamus, then it goes to the cingulate gyrus prefrontal association cortex, and from ventral stratum, pars reticularis of substantia nigra, then it directly goes to the subthalamic nucleus, then it goes to the prefrontal cortex and the deep layer of superior colliculus. यो त सुनेछ होला नि, superior colliculus. सुनेछ कि छैन?
छ म्याम.
So these are all connected functions. पढ्नु पर्छ. फंक्सन के भन्ने के फिजियोलोजीमा पर्छ कि पर्दैन? So sometimes we lack the functions. So it is concerned with the planning and the programming of the voluntary movement, and it determines how rapidly movement is performed and how large movement must be. Decrease in muscle tone, regulate the muscle tone, smooth the and voluntary movement of the body. These are movements. And what are the disorder of basal nuclei? You पनि सोध्छ है. Hyperkinetic disorder, excessive and abnormal movement मा चाहिँ के भयो? Seen in chorea, athosis, Ballism, whereas hypokinetic disorder, त्यो चाहिँ in the Parkinson disease. It's involved both type of motor disturbance. यो chorea पनि two types हुन्छ है. It is characterized by quick, adjog, irregular and involuntary movements, and it's involved tongue, face and limbs. Tongue, face र limb लाई involve गर्छ है. and swift, the sudden movement of the head and limbs are good examples. यसमा के हुन्छ त sudden movement हुन्छ है. So your difference to आफै पढ. Main importance चाहिँ what you have to see is in the CT scan. In the CT Korea, you can't see any significant finding in the CT scan of the brain. Okay, but here in Huntsting Korea, what you can see is you can see enlarged lateral ventricles due to the degeneration of the caudate nucleus. Okay? Why you have to study this? Because we are studying basal ganglia. Basal ganglion क्या है? Caudate nucleus. So if there is degeneration of the caudate nucleus, you can see the enlarged lateral ventricles because of the degeneration of the caudate nucleus. So these are the difference, and it's occurs between in the age between 5 to 15 years. It occurs age between 30 to 45 years. It's associated with rheumatic fever, whereas it is autosomal dominant inheritance disease. Okay? So it has relatively less rapid jog and it has more rapid jog. So this is the difference. तिमीलाई यो क्लिनिकलमा बढी सोध्छ होला पछि गएर त्यतिखेर याद थियो भन्ने हुन्छ. So these are the fevers. Just why this atetosis is result? It's result due to the lesion in neostriatum or globus pallidum, breaking the neurocircularity, involve the basal nuclei and cerebral cortex. भनेपछि caudate nucleus भयो भने चाहिँ अघिको डिजिज हुने भयो. अब यो चाहिँ के भयो त ग्लोबस प्यालिडस एटिटोसिस. यसमा पनि के हुन्छ त result due to the vascular lesion of the subthalamic nucleus. अघि पढेको थियो नि हामीले subthalamic nucleus. So it is characterized by the violent bursts of irregular movement in the trunk and proximal extremities. Look at it. May be restricted to the one limb. It's monobalism and involve both upper and lower limb in contralateral site of the lesion. So you just MCQ मा सोध्न सक्छ. What are the disease if the subthalamic nucleus is a lesion occurs in subthalamic nucleus? Then you have to say Balinese. Now Parkinson disease. यो एउटा चाहिँ राम्रोसँग पढ है. Write short notes on Parkinson disease भनेर आउन सक्छ. So this is usually occurs in the 50 years of age due to the deficiency of neurotransmitter dopamine in corpus striatum following a lesion in the substantia nigra. है अघि नै पढेको थियो नि हामीले substantia nigra मा pars compacta मा dopamine कम भयो भने then it can cause the Parkinson disease. So what are the character features of Parkinson? Then resting tumor. You say सोध्छ है यो anatomy मा पनि we can ask. What are the features, character features of the this Parkinson disease? Then you have to say resting tumor, cogwheel type of muscular rigidity, pill rolling movement of hand, marks like face के expression हुँदैन है, loss of expression, shift and shifting gait, stop posture, so general slowing down of movements and absence of associate movement. So you have to memorize this. Parkinson disease चाहिँ एउटा राम्रोसँग पढ्ने सोध्न सक्छ अरु नसोधे पनि. So understand is basal nuclei is the gray matters which is present in the cerebral hemisphere and it consists of head of the caudate nucleus, त्यसपछि lentiform nucleus, rostrum, हैन? You have to remember the lentiform nucleus is divided into globus pallidum and putamen. त्यसपछि head of the caudate nucleus is forming the floor of lateral ventricle, anterior horn. Similarly, body is forming what? All the structure you have to remember, right? बुझेछ कि छैन? What do I have to do?